to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, I want to start looking and exploring a subject that I see come up quite often. I see a lot of people write about it, talk about how happy they are about when a certain ceremony happens and how quickly it happens inside of the lifestyle. And what I really want to explore today is this intricate interplay of power and trust and emotion within these dynamics that really unravel these layers that make a collar or symbols inside of BDSM a very powerful symbol for many, more than just the physical symbol that they are. And whether you really have been a part of the community for a long time or someone who's just slowly starting to get inside of the lifestyle, what I want to talk about today really does, I think, is going to be a little bit more beneficial, at least going to cause some thought. And what do I want to talk about today? Because I'm bringing up collars. I want to talk about collaring dynamics inside of the lifestyle itself and how sometimes we rush into collar dynamics, or we're not really embracing it. We're not even understanding the traditionalism behind certain things, or why even it's so significant we should be taking our time. And these things, when this symbol of being collared really has a profound impact on everybody involved. On the person placing the collar, so the dominant, because it means you're taking somebody as your own, and on the person receiving it, meaning you are serving one specific person. So, I want to kind of go beyond this the leather and the hardware and the stainless steel and the clinks or the dangling around of the anklets on the all the different things that people can wear. I want to talk into this emotional area, that everything that the collars do encompass, and get really into this understanding of why we rush these collar dynamics. So this thing was kind of spurred upon me. I was reading something the other day on social media, and somebody was so excited to announce that within 2 weeks they had been collared by their dom, and they were so in love and so happy. And I have to sit back and honestly ask, the first question that pops in my mind is, are you taking any of this seriously? Now, people automatically might think I'm gatekeeping. They might think I'm judgmental. But, I've talked before how gatekeeping is necessary inside of the lifestyle for a varied amount of reasons. But one is because we are upholding the traditions that we do so we can actually receive the most out of the lifestyle that we're putting into it. There is a reason why that you never really fully grasp the concept of, how to ever properly within a week of how to spank somebody. You have to work at it and practice on it, or how to whip them, or how to conduct an interrogation scene, or do needle play, or do edge play, because these things take time. We don't rush them. Now, a collar's significance, if you're not overly familiar, ends up becoming a dedication point, kind of not unlike a marriage between two people. And it signifies that it should signify, as the way I understand it, and the way that a lot of practitioners understand it, that a couple has been together in a dynamic for an extensive amount of time. And when I say extensive, it's usually at least well beyond the 1 year mark. Usually it's starting into the second or even potentially third year. There are a multitude of types of collars. I'm going to discuss a varied amount of those today. But I do, the final collar, which is it's the collar of ownership. It really becomes a symbol like a marriage ring. And I see a lot of people in a short amount of time are rushing into that. And then they wonder if, when a couple months goes by and things don't work out, they're blaming the lifestyle. They're blaming everybody but themselves because it's a lack of understanding. So what we're really doing is spitting in the face of tradition. We're not taking any responsibility for our actions, and we are watching and destroying something that we say we want to be a part of, but we don't really care how we get there in the end. And part of it becomes this fast food mentality. So we need to understand that a collar isn't an accessory here. It's part of the dynamic tales of the power and the submission and this intimate connection between two people. If you can really picture the collar as more than just an item, it's a silent language spoken in the dynamics of dominance and surrender. And let's really get to the heart of it here. First, we need to define the symbolic meaning in collars. And they're not just these pieces of leather and metal. They're a token of commitment between two people. They're a token of trust. They're a token of the exploration that two people have gone on and are going to continue to go on inside of a BDSM context. And that's pretty powerful, object. It's a pretty powerful marker between two people. It becomes like the secret handshake in a subcultural society that we all live in, where the collar signifies an unspoken understanding between the dominant and the submissive who choose to actively engage in this final step in their dynamic. Now, there is an emotional impact here, and I don't want to overlook that. It definitely can't be understated at all. You need to picture the moment that latch closes around the neck or the buckle finally snaps into place. It's an intimate sensation. It's a connection. It's really forged beyond the physical. It's a sweet tension of the submission and the power and embrace of the dominance that make two people vulnerable towards each other. It's all kind of wrapped up in this thrill of trust. And it's encapsulated in a singular act. Now, sometimes this is done in front of quite a few people. There's collaring ceremonies. But the collar really is more than just an accessory. It's the embodiment here of this shared feeling between the people involved, and the symbol of their connection between the dominant and the submissive. But really, how do couples navigate this symbolism inside of their relationship? I mean, does the symbol really mean anything? Does the symbol mean anything if we're rushing it? Now, I know one question I've gotten before is when I've discussed this topic is, well, people rush in and they get married. You're right. And more often than not, when they rush into a marriage, those marriages do not work because they didn't take the actual act of what they were doing seriously. They didn't put enough consideration or thought inside of the embodiment of the commitment to each other. There wasn't that much thought there. It was just kind of played off. Now, for those people who are going to come back and say, oh, well, yeah, my cousin's best friend's boyfriend little sister down the road, cousin's uncle, and, Alaska did it, and they got married, and they've been married for 50 years. Well, that's great. They're the exception. They're not the rule. We don't rush things intentionally anymore. At least we didn't used to. And that's part of the point of the lifestyle. You're supposed to embrace it and go along. I was talking with somebody, and I hope they know who I'm about to mention when I say this. I was talking to them about their dynamic. And they were talking about how one of the partners had made a mistake, and they stumbled, but the partner was apologetic. And the other person was reassuring, saying it was okay. And I told this person, you need to embrace those times. You need to embrace the mistakes. This isn't a race. You just need to enjoy it. And you do. You have to enjoy all of this as you move along, because you're starting to figure out as you move forward. Now that does change if you're already previously married, or if you're married entering the lifestyle, to if you're a boyfriend and girlfriend, or you meet somebody inside the lifestyle. All of these connections become deeper. I firmly believe if you're married coming into this lifestyle, when you get to the point of talking about a collaring ceremony, it is going to take on a much more significant and deeper meaning, maybe bringing your relationship even closer than it was before. And the same goes for, just a romantic relationship, maybe on the boyfriend-girlfriend type style level. But if you're meeting somebody, you're kind of taking this journey, and it's really not a rush. It's not a competition to get collared. And I think a lot of people end up getting inside and they're like, I can't wait to be collared, or I see this from submissives all the time. I'm going to touch base very lightly on self-collaring, because that's not a thing. And there isn't a psychological that becomes from more of a dominant perspective. That's not a thing. but I'll get into that separately. But we take these ceremonies and we're really kind of, going through the motions and not really understanding why do we have all of these other types of collars? Why are we doing all of these other types of things along the way? Why? Why do we have collars of, I don't know, training collars or collars of consideration or maybe a day collar or a protection collar? Why do we have play collars? And then finally, why do we have the permanent collar? There is all of these different nuances that are inside of these things for certain reasons. Because see, long ago, before the fast food mentality of BDSM or the people entering BDSM now came in, we took our time inside of the lifestyle. We were getting to know somebody, we were talking to them or we were meeting them at the dungeon or playing with them privately. If we were going on dates, we were really just enjoying the getting. It was like any other relationship. We were getting to know them. And when the dominant got to that point in the discussions with the submissive, they had to make a final decision. Do they start moving into where they can see in the context of taking ownership over somebody? So they might start with a training collar, and it's kind of like a feeling out process. Now, a training collar becomes this essential where you're helping defining and the dynamics and the importance of the type of training that's going on, but that you're kind of committed to one person. They don't own you necessarily. All of your movements or thoughts, they shouldn't be. They're just training you. And you have another collar where submissive may not be maybe out of a dynamic, and they're on their own, and they have, or maybe their dominant passed away. I've seen that happen, and they ask a dominant to kind of protect them, to kind of look after them, really is what it means, so that they're not making the wrong choices. That if somebody really wants to get in contact with them, which is the way we used to do it old school, if a dom was looking, that it was vetted, and a sub was looking, that was vetted, they could put, and just two people kind of combined, could put them together. However, that sub was under the protection of another dominant. That way that she may or may not keep up with some trainings, but she's not doing anything sexually, or that sub's not doing anything sexually with that dominant. They're just, that dom's looking after them. If somebody wants to talk to them, they got to go through them first. And that's really what that collar signified. Day collars are more about discretion, and if you're wearing something to work, so somebody knows, the submissive knows that they're still, in that process of belonging to someone. They can feel that connection to them, but it's not overt. And the pet play collars kind of get more along pet play dynamics. Their significance more in the engaging in the pet play levels of BDSM, but the real final collar type here, there might be some I'm missing along the way, and that's fine. I mean, if you are looking at different ones or saying, oh, well, what about this one? There are others. But the final one usually is the permanent collar. And this is the one where we really compare it to a wedding ring. And these there are the pure symbol of deep commitment and all of the elements of locking one to another. And even they might even signify ownership. And that's okay for some of us that are more old school when we go along. But when we're doing all of these things and we're looking at all of these, different symbols or the different definitions, it's to understand and what this all actually means and how impactful it means to us. If none of what I just said matters, you've never heard about, or your doms never talked about, or your subs never really talked about, or they don't care to discuss it, that's fine. But if you're kind of looking to get more out of the lifestyle, if you're trying to understand how this all began and what a lot of people do partake in, you're missing out on a big part of it. And you're rushing through it. I have never, ever seen a dynamic that started within a week, let alone, I don't know why a dynamic is starting in the first 2 weeks anyways, but yet that somebody's being collared in the first 2 weeks of meeting someone and that working. Nowhere on any planet that I've been on in the world of BDSM has that ever worked. Have I read a story of that working out? Because it doesn't. And I don't want to stray too much into the realm of fantasy versus reality, because I've talked about that before on here. We get caught up in a lot of this fantastical era belief of what the lifestyle is going to do versus what the reality of it is. And a lot of that reality comes down to there is a lot of work that has to go into what we have to do in the lifestyle itself, and how much effort we have to put into the lifestyle. And I think a lot of people don't want to do that because it does require a lot of work. So we kind of take shortcuts, but when you're shortcutting things, you're detracting. You're not understanding the emotional impact it's going to have on somebody. If you go and rush out and go, oh my God, we've seen twice. I really think you're the one for me. I want to collar you. And oh my God, yes, I want to be collared to you. And then that's it. You don't really understand what you're doing. You may not even understand what you're saying or you're agreeing to, and the impact that it's going to have on you. Now, I do want to touch base on this new thing about self-collaring. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because probably more in there for another show. But from a self-reflective standpoint, self-collaring to me is it's a joke. It's not real. And I'm sure that's going to upset a lot of people that I'm saying that. But this year I'm going to start making this more about not only some of the facts and the emotions that go along with what we do, but I'm going to be offering more of my insights, especially from the sheer amount of time that I've spent inside of the lifestyle. You can't really collar yourself. You can't own yourself, because then that means who is the dominant that put that collar on you? What does it signify? If anything, there is no signification of any union to you and to somebody else. Self-collaring is a lie. It has to be done by a dominant to a submissive. Now, I know I think it was a brat who kind of started the trend a few years ago, maybe quite a bit longer, but the whole point inside of BDSM, depending on the roles, you either end up in the role of where you intend on eventually topping and owning somebody, or you end up in the role in between, or the final role is the submissive side where you're going to give yourself up to somebody. This notion of self-collaring to me, this whole self-empowerment, it's not self-empowerment. It's self-isolation. You are telling me that there's more going on with you emotionally, and that you don't have your life sorted out to be stable enough, probably into a relationship, to believe this is what you need to feel fulfilled. Doesn't work that way. Pretty much all I want to say on the self-collaring aspect, because I'm sure that's going to maybe upset a few people, but frankly, I think we need to start hearing these things, because we've gotten to the point especially with a lot in certain social media areas recently, especially on the bigger social media platforms where BDSM really kind of thrives, like FetLife or Fetish.com, some places on X where there's a lot, Facebook groups. There are these people who have massive followings who try to dictate, and I'm not trying to dictate. If you want to do these things, you can, but I can tell you, you're not getting the most out of your understanding inside of it. You're rushing through things that you don't understand. So the difference between me and what other people are going to be saying is that I'm not sitting here telling you don't do it or you're a fraud. If you want to do it, regardless of how somebody else is going to view you, probably not going to matter to you. But if you go and tell me you've been inside of my circle of friends and show up and we're all at a dungeon and you're like, I got collared 2 weeks ago after being with a person for a month, none of us are going to think you take BDSM seriously. We are going to believe you think it's a joke, that it's just some, childhood fantasy you wanted to play in. And when you're done, you're going to put it back in a box. So you're a pretender to us. You don't really embrace the embodiment of what BDSM and the lifestyle and being connected to somebody else actually means. And that's really where the power of the collar really comes in. And we're really rushing through these things. And I don't have the understanding as to why. Why are we getting so overzealous? Are dominants fearful that the submissive, if they're not collared, is going to leave them? Is the submissive worried that if the dominant offers the collar early and they don't take it, they're going to get, go and find a sub who will? I mean, if these are some of the starting questions, you're finding yourself in the wrong place. If you're concerned, and that's like for any relationship, if you're worried that your sub that you've want to collar and you only want to collar them so they don't go anywhere else, well then that's not that's not a healthy relationship. That means that you're telling me you're having communication problems, you have trust issues, you have a lot of things that you haven't worked out between the two of you. Putting a collar on somebody's neck at that point is a way to lock them into a commitment, to trap them into a commitment. And that's not going to be unhealthy from a dominant perspective at all. It's not going to quell any fears of insecurities or anxiety. It's going to actually amplify it and make it worse. If this is the other side and you're being submissive and you're agreeing, well, then you have to start considering the fact that you're doing so out of a pleasing personality, or you're worried about being alone or being rejected or not being good enough. So you might have a self-esteem or self-worth issue that you need to address. You don't have to agree to being somebody's submissive on the point where you're getting collared just because you're fearful if you don't, they're going to go somewhere else. Well, then don't be with that person. That if you decide to be in a dynamic that's one-on-one, or you're choosing a monogamous style dynamic, well, then that's what that should be. If they're making those types of threats, well, if you don't take my collar, I'll get somebody who will, that's not the person you want to be with. Because then now we're getting into the realms of manipulation. It's just really, we need to start understanding there needs to be a more thoughtful and measured approach to collaring dynamics. We need to understand that there's more to it than, oh wow, we've agreed that sex is in our relationship and you spanked me really hard and we had some really awesome sex last night. I can't wait now, I want to be collared to you. You're diminishing what the point of the whole collar actually means. You don't really understand it. And when I hear these discussions from people, it's not that there's not a genuine desire to learn about the lifestyle, but it really does come down to a lack of commitment. If giving time allows you a better understanding of all things, gaining more information, it allows you to build trust, it allows you to take your consent to a deeper level, why would you want to rush that? By taking your time, you stave off any potential problems that you may encounter along the way. We're not stopping them, we're accelerating them if we're actually doing the opposite. So we need to really start looking at this impact for everybody that's involved. There are here too these emotional responsibilities, and I started touching base on this before, and considerations that do come with being the one person who presents or receives the collar. And that's a major emotional responsibility, because now we're saying, first, me as the dominant, I am going to take care of you. You belong to me. I belong to you. I might be, now I'm going to be really going from a macro to a micromanaging your life. I'm going to put forth all of this effort. I am going to be expending all of this emotional energy, and I'm going to invest it into you. And for a submissive who is receiving a collar, this consideration now becomes, I am going to serve you and only you, or maybe potentially be your slave, whatever the case may present itself. I'm only, your desires, your commands, your tasks, your orders, your trainings come from you and only you, and I will only abide to you. So there was a massive amount of responsibility, and even for them as the emotional side, they're turning you to the dominant for their protection, for their safety, for their care. So there's a massive amount of emotional responsibility that comes with all of this. And hopefully we're working through it with a lot of shared and open communication, which really does emphasize and build a healthier dynamic. If you keep rushing these things, though, you're not going to create open and healthy dynamics. You're going to create dynamics built more so on fear. When I see people entering dynamics inside of 5 months or 6 months or less, as far as not so much calling it a dynamic, but introducing a collar inside of 6 months or less, I can usually pick apart what's wrong. They did it out of fear, they did it out of being rushed, or they did it out of being uneducated about things. And that's really kind of where the three primaries lie. And if it's the last one, where they're uneducated about the lifestyle, that's not necessarily someone I'd want to belong to or take ownership of. And we have to consider these things. I know people thinking I'm going to be, this is all about me bagging on that. I'm not. I'm really actually trying to tell you how much of a commitment. I have known certain DOMs that their commitment when they get involved with people or they get involved in a submissive relationship, that commitment, the submissives know they're not going to receive probably their first collar of consideration. So that's more of a collar of whether or not they're just starting to consider that person to potentially be their submissive. They're not even their submissive yet. They're just considering that person. That it's 2 years to get to that point. That it's an additional year or two more to get to the point of a final permanent collar. That's a long commitment. And some people might be going, my God, that's too long. I'd never do that. Well, why wouldn't you want to build a relationship inside of this lifestyle? I challenge you with that question. If you're all about wanting to rush through and not enjoy, not embrace, find the right person that's either going to earn the collar around their neck or earn the ability to place that collar around your neck, why are you doing this in the first place? Then you're kind of just, I don't know what you're looking for out of lifestyle, but by going any faster than that, you're not going to get out of this lifestyle what you're hoping to. And then in turn, when something goes wrong, and more than likely it will, you will turn and blame the lifestyle, how it failed you, how it was wrong, how all these other parts failed, or it was just the other person. You would share that same responsibility. Collars really do carry a very deep meaning, and we need to consider that. So, if I was to consider any practical advice, take your time when you're getting involved with somebody. Don't be bringing up collars right away. A collar discussion maybe after a year, and then learn about the different types of collars. Understand what they signify and represent. Because that way, you're sharing in an experience with somebody else, and you're taking them along with you for the ride. You're not doing the ride alone. So I'm very curious on what some people's thoughts on this are, where you're standing with the collars, how, have you been involved in relationships that, you collared somebody quite soon, or they tried to collar you quite soon, or is the average in your dynamics that you've ever been in or have been in, you've had to wait an extended amount of time? I'd kind of like to hear some comments and feedback. If this is the first time you're listening to me, I do ask you to, follow the show, like and love it. Helps me grow, support the show, keep the show free for now. Rate me 5 stars so other people can find me, so more people can find this content. I do have a book out, Tangled Desires, the intersection of BDSM and psychology. It is currently out where you can buy your ebooks. I'm now finishing up the final edit has been done on the hard book. I'm just waiting on the announcement for it to go to print, so it's in paperback for some people who can buy it. And a new announcement that I made last week, and I'm going to make it again. There's something new that's going to be coming out here in the next couple of months. I'm trying to get it done sooner if I can. But it's going to be something separate from the kink perspective that I'll be doing. It's going to bring another different elements of the lifestyle and everything that kind of encompasses our lifestyle. I'm quite excited to do it. That I haven't figured all of it out yet, but as more details unfold, I'll keep letting you know week by week, and I'll keep you all updated. But let me know what you think about today's show in the comments, and let me know if what your thoughts are on these types of dynamics. All right, I think it is an important discussion that we do have, that we don't talk about a lot of. It's outside of, I just can't wait to be collared, or I can't wait to collar somebody. It goes beyond all of that. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay kink.